Do they think having Trump all cooped up in that courtroom was somehow going to, I don't know, sap his mojo, make him all scared and weak? And not at all. No way. So the judge has off on Wednesdays. They call it a calendar day. Time for him to have lunch with his colleagues, brush up on the law. He's got a lot of brushing up to do. Anyway, he hits the campaign trail in the middle of the week. 2 rallies today. All the issues, you know the issues, we know the issues, right? I mean, no more bogus wars that we lose. How about having a border and not letting 8 million people in illegally? That kind of stuff. And also, of course, giving it to Joe Biden. Bad.
You know, when Biden went to the beach all the time, he'd go to the beach Tuesday, Wednesday. He's 81 years old. He doesn't look good in a bathing suit. Not a lot of people look good in it, but that's okay. But somebody thought he looked good. But then he couldn't lift the chair. You know those chairs are meant for children to lift. They weigh about 4 ounces, right? You know, they're made out of hollow aluminum. Really light. In fact, if you're heavy, they crash. They bend in. They don't weigh much. And he was... And then he couldn't get his feet out of the sand. This is not a good look.
I forgot about all that stuff last summer. Yeah, what's up with that? And he has every right to point it out, especially when Joe Biden is the guy who's trying to put him in jail. And more serious stuff about what's happening in Europe, how it's actually migrated or migrating to our country.
We've seen what happened when Europe opened their doors to jihad. Look at Paris. Look at London. They're no longer recognizable. And I'm going to get myself into a lot of trouble with the folks in Paris and the folks in London. But you know what? That's the fact. They are no longer recognizable. And we can't let that happen to our country. We have incredible culture, tradition. Nothing wrong with their culture, their tradition. We can't let that happen here. And I'll never let it happen to the United States of America.
It is a fact what's happening over there. London, England, they've lost it. They're losing their culture. It is being taken over. It is sad. You know, there is something to say about assimilation. You want people to, if they're coming, come legally and assimilate, you know, into the country. The values that Britain has or the values that France used to have, being overtaken by hordes of illegals. And we don't want that happening here. But it's already happening, right? Our culture is disintegrating. We talk London, we talk Paris. Let's take a look at USC, the University of Southern California. Anti-Semitism. Haven't seen anti-Semitism really out in the open like this, I don't think since Paris. Paris has had to deal with this for a long time. UCLA, right across town, also absolutely horrific. Horrific. This is America. No, it's not. We can fix this, but we have to move fast. Hey, Columbia University last night, I know, cops everywhere. I think it took about 6 minutes for them to take the building back and get rid of all those anarchists and, quite frankly, Jew haters. That's what they are. Who, by the way, trashed the place. They absolutely trashed the place. Look at this. Horrible graffiti all over the place and just, well, making a mess of things, vandalizing, destroying, defacing, and a lot worse than January 6th. Can't emphasize this enough, okay? January 6th was not such a big deal, all right? 36 hours after January 6th, actually the morning of January 8th, totally clean, open, no problem. They're going to be cleaning up Hamilton Hall at Columbia for months. Joe Biden, meanwhile, laughing, enjoying himself, keeping a very low profile. You know, for all of his presidency, really, avoiding the media, not doing interviews, not doing press conferences, and when he does them, they're catastrophic failures, so he doesn't want to do them. But nowhere more has his lack of leadership ability been evident since, well, October 7th, what happened to Israel. You know, Joe, in some quarters, well, he's been really good on this issue. No, he hasn't. He's let down everybody. He's let down freedom-loving people. You know, in the aftermath, the immediate aftermath, it's like it is today, quiet. Sunday, October 8th. You know what he was doing? He was with those investigators looking into the secret documents he kept in his garage in his house. Yep. Even throughout the week, nothing Nothing. Jews were dying all over the place. They were picking up the pieces. Joe Biden had nothing to say. And finally, when he did, and the anti-Semitic riots had already started in America, and we knew Iran had a role in all that stuff, he didn't say anything about Iran. He didn't say anything about anti-Semitism. And he still is basically hiding, head in the sand, worried about what AOC is going to say. The whole country basically up in smoke to some degree, right? Look all over the place. It's awful. And where was Joe today? Nowhere. A private event. They put out a paper statement. You know, why be president if you're not going to lead? You know, don't you want to lead? Especially at a moment like this. Thing is, Joe doesn't know how to lead. Can't forget that Joe spent his entire adult life, essentially, as one of 100 U.S. senators. Joe's in here somewhere. Yeah, there he is, all the way in the back. And everybody in that picture sitting, they're all of the same rank, all right? 100 senators. They get there and they realize, oh, you know, I'm just one of 100. It's not that big a deal. They have like 30 staff members. They write letters and make deals and raise money. It's not a leadership position. He doesn't know how to lead. And the guy who does, they're trying to throw him in jail.
If I wasn't running or doing well, if I wasn't running, I wouldn't have more indictments than the great Alphonse Capone. Alphonse Capone. He killed people if they looked at him a little bit different. I don't like the way that guy looks. I don't like, kill that son of a bitch. He only got indicted once, I understand. Alphonse Capone, nice gentleman. I got indicted. Can you imagine my mother and father saying, I can't believe it. My son got indicted more than Al Capone.
He's right. He got indicted more than the notorious gangster Al Capone. How many times? Six felony counts against Al Capone there. And how many for President Trump? 91. That is pretty insane. That's a joke. That makes this whole thing comical. How about Jeffrey Dahmer? The guy who ate people. 15 felony counts. Murder, granted. And how many prosecutors were on his case? 2, sometimes 3, depended on the day. How many prosecutors are up against Donald Trump? 8, sometimes 10, depending on the day, for this little thing about filling out a check stub with the wrong word. Really, that's like the main thing. He did not keep accurate check stubs. Well, this case is blowing up in their face. I'm fascinated by it. I catch up on the transcripts, especially when there's no court. It's really cool. You know, the star witnesses, right? Michael Cohen. And every single one of the prosecution's witnesses so far, they hate Michael Cohen. They make fun of him. And this goes back to 2018. Folks, there's so much fake news about this. Watch carefully.
But today in court, Cohen emotionally declared he'll fight to make sure history doesn't remember him as the villain. His voice cracking, he described the shame he'd brought on his wife, children, and elderly parents, all of whom were in court. But the judge was unmoved, sentencing Cohen to 3 years in prison for what he called a veritable smorgasbord of fraud, saying Cohen had lost his moral compass.
Wow, that's a pretty stinging indictment, right? Really harsh thing to say. Back in 2018, 6 years ago, Cohen blames Trump for every single one of his problems. But his problems, actually, what got him in real trouble, have nothing to do with Donald Trump, even though the fake news tries to deceive us.
Michael Cohen arriving at court today, clutching the arm of his heartbroken daughter.
Hey, Michael, you're afraid.
Hoping for mercy, he took full responsibility for his crimes. The personal ones to me, he said, and those involving the President of the United States. Prosecutors say Cohen acted in coordination with and at the direction of Individual One, a.k.a. Donald Trump, when he facilitated hush money payments to porn star Stormy Daniels and Playboy playmate Karen McDougal so they wouldn't go public before the election.
Well, you notice he said, Cohen, he was quoted as saying, the crime's personal to me and the ones with the president. Let's skip these, the alleged with the president. Okay, forget them. Let's stick to the personal ones for Cohen, because they're real, and that's why he went to jail. This stuff is fake. Avoiding income tax, that's real, and he did. And I have this from the federal government. How much money did he make and not report? Take a look at that in 2012. Almost $900,000 he did not report to the government. Had nothing to do with Trump. It had to do with these taxi medallions and properties that he owned and was moving around. 2013, $500,000. Didn't owed the government $300,000 of that. It goes on like this. $670,000 in 2014. You see, almost $1 million in 2015. And look at all the money that we, the people, lost out on, the IRS. This is why he went to jail, not that other stuff. And the other thing that the prosecution, I think they're kind of, Michael Cohen, nobody likes him and nobody believes him, even the prosecution's own witnesses. Everybody who takes the stand says that this guy is not nice and is not honest and is all around bad. I have this from the transcript this week. Let's go through it. This guy, Keith Davidson, is a lawyer, and he's telling a story here. Gina called me up to tell me that some jerk called me and was very, very aggressive and threatened to sue me. Wow. And would you like to, Keith, call this jerk back? The prosecutor says, I hate to ask it this way, but who was that jerk? It was Michael Cohen. And Mr. Cohen, I believe you said, you believe he's an aggressive guy. He's a fast speaker, someone who is not the easiest guy to work with. I would say so, yes. And it goes on like this, all the witnesses. And Gina, Dylan asked Gina to call Michael Cohen and finish the deal with him, and Gina refused. So she asked me to call Cohen, and I refused. And then Dylan called me to convince me to call Cohen. The moral of the story was no one wanted to talk to Cohen. Prosecutor's like, okay. And the jurors all laughed. They're getting the picture. This guy is a jerk. I think there's one more. So what happened when you called? Did you call Michael Cohen? I did. Tell us about that. He actually had to call Cohen. Now listen to this. I called. I was transferred to Michael Cohen. I introduced myself. And before I could barely get my name out, I was just met with a hustle barrage of insults and insinuations and allegations that went on for quite a while. What was the gist of what he was accusing you of? I don't think he was accusing us of anything. He was just screaming. He is a crazy person. He was 6 years ago, and he was 2 days ago.
What happens is there's like all of this sort of mental excitement because he's such a despicable human being, a racist, sexist, misogynist, xenophobe, homophobe, Islamophobe, anti-Semite, that I want to see him in an orange jumpsuit. No. If that's where he ultimately ends up, okay.
He needs to be in a rubber room. So why did they go forward with this case, with this as their star witness? Well, Alvin Bragg, under a lot of pressure from the Biden White House, we believe, from George Soros. You know, it wasn't an easy thing for him to become the district attorney. There were a lot of very liberal candidates running for the same position, and they all had to out-liberal each other to get the big money, the George Soros money. And Alvin Bragg got a huge chunk of George Soros money. He's got that PAC, Color of Change. Well, look at this. They pledged $1 million. Color of Change PAC also pledged over $1 million on an independent expenditure campaign to support Alvin Bragg. But something weird happens. In the middle of the campaign, a woman reportedly calls the campaign, calls other people and says, Alvin Bragg did something to me when we were in college, and it was very, very bad. Every campaign knew about this. They were going to report it, but it never made news during the campaign. But the George Soros people started pulling back their money.